My name's Corey Wargo. This is Speech Performance 1. Imagine for a minute that you're sitting comfortably underneath a huge oak tree, smack dab in the middle of 100 acres of prime whitetail country. It's nearly dawn, and suddenly, out from the shadows, trots an 8-point buck. You look him over and realize that he's immature. He's only about 2.5 years old. So you lower your scope, watch him a little longer, and then he's gone. Can you really tell how old a buck is just by looking at him? Yes, you can. But until recently, I couldn't, and I feel bad that my first buck was so young. Had I only waited a couple more years, he could have grown into quite a trophy. And not only that, but even though the older bucks produce a healthier herd, you still need some younger ones around to reduce the breeding pressure on the older ones. As you watch deer on the run around the city, or you watch them from your own backyard, have you ever wondered why one buck can look so different from another with the same point count? This evening I'm going to share some of the physical and behavioral characteristics of 4 different age groups of whitetail buck. I'm going to talk about yearlings, immature bucks, mature bucks, and post-mature bucks, so that whether you're a watcher or a hunter, you too can age the whitetail buck on the hoof and hopefully avoid the same mistake I made. The first category I want to discuss is yearling bucks. Now these bucks are actually 1.5 years old, born late in the spring of the previous year. Their antlers are thin with short tines, and they can range anywhere from 1 to 10 points. This buck has a cute little baby face. And as you can see from the illustration, his neck is rather skinny, and it's quite obvious where it meets the shoulders and the chest. His legs are long and lanky compared to the rest of his body, and if from a distance you cover his antlers with your thumb, he looks more like a doe than a buck. All of my illustrations come from a poster entitled Field Guide for Buck Deer, published by Wildlife Enterprises 2000. In addition to looking like a youngster, this buck behaves like a youngster. Often heedless of his surroundings, he'll be the first buck out on the food plot in the early evenings. You can tell he's fairly quickly, and that a yearling buck is just that. He's young and impertinent, with very entertaining to watch. The second category I wanted to discuss is immature bucks. These bucks range from age from 2.5 to 3.5 years, and generally have antlers with thicker main beams and longer tines. The face is still rather long, and if you picture it in a triangle, you'll see the distance from the top of the head to the bottom of the jaw is actually shorter than the distance down the nose or from the jaw to the nose. The neck is beginning to fill out, but it's still obvious where it meets the chest and shoulders, and the legs still look long and in proportion to the body. And if you look at a distance from the ground to the bottom of the chest and the ground to the waist, it's clear that the waist is smaller than the chest. Immature bucks are more cautious than yearlings, and will typically follow them out to the food plot in the early evenings. This age group is the most tempting to harvest because they can have impressive racks and are fairly easy to shoot because of their aggressive pursuit of the doe in heat. Immature bucks still appear much like does without antlers at this stage, and because of their relentless promiscuity, more of this age group are taken than any other. By the way, you can find much of what I'm discussing and a whole lot more at www.whitetaildeer.com, which I accessed on March 14th and periodically updated. The third category that I want to talk about is mature bucks. These are 4.5 to 6.5 year olds. As you can see from this picture, the head creates an equilateral triangle and looks balanced. The neck is thick as the shoulders and chest, so there's no real distinction. And the legs are appearing a little shorter now in proportion to its body. If you note the straight line from the bottom of the chest to the waist with just a slight amount of sag. Mature bucks are trophy bucks. Until now, most of the growing energy has been concentrated on skeletal development, but at maturity, most of their energy is now concentrated at antler development. Unfortunately, these bucks also undergo a major behavioral change as well. This age group is much more reclusive than their younger brothers. You'll be lucky to see them out at legal hunting times. Mature bucks are in their prime with full-size bodies, impressive antlers, and an evasive attitude. The fourth and final category I want to talk about is post-mature bucks. These are the 7.5-year-olds and older. As a buck continues to age, he exhibits many of the characteristics of a senior citizen. His face becomes rather stubby. His skin starts to sag and droop. His legs appear much shorter than his body because of this sagging midsection and swayed back. The antlers still quite impressive, but now they begin to deteriorate because his teeth are getting old and worn, and so he's getting fewer nutrients. Now this age group is the most challenging to hunt. Having survived many hunting seasons already, I was fortunate enough to see a buck at this stage. Ambulance local. In a few minutes past legal hunting time, he was with a group of does that the younger bucks were herding out in front of him. He was an ugly old buck, and it looked like it really hurt his joints and his feet to walk. Post-mature bucks look old, with pot bellies and saggy skin, and as whitetaileddeer.com puts it, they're like old grandfathers, but still the kind who truly enjoy interacting with their young grandchildren. So now that we've talked about some of the physical and behavioral characteristics of 4 different age groups of whitetail buck, we've talked about the size and the shape of the head and the nose as it relates to a triangle. We've talked about how the neck and legs look in proportion to the body, and how the chest and the back and the torso are shaped. We've also discussed some of the behavioral characteristics ranging anywhere from heedless to impertinent to wide-eyed, raring to go, to very cautious and solitary. So whether you want to be able to judge the ages of your bucks for effective herd management or to grow trophy bucks, or for whatever reason you may have, the basic physical and behavioral characteristics of each age group can aid you in determining just how old the buck is, and in doing so, hopefully avoid the embarrassing mistake that I made with my first buck.